growing up, my dad was a military guy. You'd say, "Hey, I want to do this or I want to do that," and he was always like, "Well, why aren't you doing it?" A lot of people have ideas, and a lot of people have, "I want to do this, I want to do that," but if you don't implement it, it just sits there, stagnates.
If I could go back in my lifetime and say, what's a big mistake? I wish I figured this out earlier.
Ask questions, ask why.
It takes a special leader to help you grow in a certain role.
Doesn't matter how I speak, doesn't matter how I look.
And it holds true as you think big and don't let anybody stop you.
Now that's a success story. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Success Stories. I'm Steve Cross, the host, and today we have a doozy for you. It is Brad Stutzman, the founder and CEO of O3 Energy based out of Texas. Brad, thanks for being on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Steve.
Yeah, where we always like to start. Number one, where did you start? How did you get to be the CEO and founder of O3 Energy? Did you have this course planned out and you knew the last 20 years where you were going? It was pretty linear, or did you just kind of, like most of us, I woke up one day and this is kind of the course I was on?
Yeah, so it's actually an interesting story. Everybody always asks how I got into renewables. Did you go to college as an engineer? What was your main focus? And for me, I kind of fell into it, if that makes sense. Out of college, I worked for a bank. The bank did construction and development financing. After a few years at the bank, left the bank with my partner at the time, and we started a company to focus on the financing of builders and developers on the real estate side of things. And so we had that business for a little while, and in 2007, we had the Great Recession. By the time it hit Texas, it was 2009, and
Really?
A lot of the builders and developers we were working with had large tracts of land. Banks weren't financing construction or development projects. So we were trying to figure out how to, continue on bringing in revenue to the company. At the time, President Obama came out with the American Recovery Act, which had a lot of incentives for renewables. So the developers that we're working with had these large tracts of land. They were trying to figure out what to do with them, how to cash flow them. And so we started learning how to finance renewable energy projects using the incentives that were in the American Recovery Act. So that we kind of pivoted the company. And as we learned how to finance projects, we started getting opportunities to develop our own projects, renewable energy, mainly solar projects. We had some opportunities with wind as well. And then eventually I broke away and started O3 Energy to go ahead and finance my own projects and develop my own projects. And over time have grown that into also, acting as a third-party developer and coming in and building our own projects. So acting as the contractor as well. So
Gotcha.
That's kind of how we've evolved as a company and how my career has evolved as well. So.
Now, was there a certain milestone or threshold when you made the jump from the finance side over to like, hey, I think I can do this on my own type of, because it seems like the other side of it, right?
Right. No, I guess it wasn't like a set milestone. Just started seeing opportunities. There was projects that would come up, and the developer that we were working with was saying, hey, I don't have the money to pay you to put together the financing for this project, but hey, let me give you an ownership stake in it, or opportunities like that. So that was kind of the transition from the finance side, and you see it a lot on real estate as well. Groups that come in as financing groups, and then often start playing in ownership and developing their own projects. And so that it was just a natural progression on the renewable energy side of things.
Gotcha. And what during your career set you up, do you think, best for being a leader at O3, being that CEO role rather than, I'm not saying that you weren't a pivotal role in your previous positions, but when you're the CEO, like a lot of things hinge on your capacity
Right.
and your ability to perform, right? What do you think helped you along that way of your career journey to make you successful in this role?
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a good question. I mean, I don't know everything that's happened to me to set me up as a good leader, but there's definitely some things throughout the years. I've always been very entrepreneurial myself. Had small businesses
Yeah.
in college where I had to hire and fire individuals, learn how to manage people. Definitely made a lot of mistakes, as a
Yeah,
young
right.
entrepreneur, and that's where you learn how to be a better leader. So, I would say that those early mistakes are what set me up to be a better leader later on in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty much
Any
it.
hey, not to put you on the spot, but any huge, not huge mistake, but any influential mistake where you're like, shit, I'm never doing that again. That kind of sticks out of that learning, right? Because
Right.
failure isn't that destination; it's just a step of success, right? So, any of those that stick out to you along the way?
Yeah, so as long as you learn from your failures, it's not really a failure, right? It's a
Yeah.
learning experience. It was I think it was Thomas Edison that said, he didn't
Yeah.
fail 160 times. He just learned how to not make a light bulb successful 160 times.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of the same way with entrepreneurship, right? You're learning how to be better at your role. You're learning how to be better at within the industry. And those failures teach you what not to do, and teach you how to get to the place wherever the areas of things that you're supposed to be doing. I would say one of the biggest things that I learned early on is not to necessarily force growth quickly. I think early on in your career, you want to move ahead as quickly as possible. Fast, fast, fast. Let's grow, grow, grow. And sometimes that's not the best thing to do. Make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row before you really start pressing on with growth. So,
Love it. Yeah, that controlled, right? And strategic
right.
growth rather than just
Yes.
accepting anything that comes your way can
Right.
kind of get out of hand sometimes.
Yeah.
You find yourself in a place where you didn't expect to be and you're not sure how to get the heck out of there. Yeah,
Yeah. No,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Well, in the new role when you started O3 Energy, I would like to talk about the company a little bit. But in that role, was there something that you really were excited for in that new role as a CEO and a founder of I get to do this, and I feel like I have these qualities that I now get to, maybe I have, get more influence on the bottom line, right? That's why most of us get into the ownership role. But talk a little bit about your role and your capacity to lead there.
Yeah, so I've always been very excited about building things,
Hmm.
and I think that was the biggest thing that excited me about O3 was being able to build a renewable energy services company from the ground. Early on, it was just me. I didn't have any employees at the time, so it was just me running around doing pretty much everything. We started off in a Regis, a dust,
Yeah.
one of those shared office
Yeah.
spaces, and then it turned into, we had one business suite in there, we had two, then we had three, as we got some employees, or say I got some employees, and then we ended up leasing, the floor a few floors up from the Regis in the same building, and that now we have our own office space. And we've been here for 7 years. So, it's just slow growth, and you just continue to, press ahead. And that was really what I got excited about was building the company from scratch, and looking at, all the different areas of where we could grow. The really exciting thing about the industry, renewables as a whole, is, it's a new industry, right? So there's not a whole lot of, this is the way that we've done it for 100 years and this is what works. That's not what works. Everything is always consistently changing and growing. There's always something that we did yesterday that we find out today, it works better doing it the total opposite way. So, the industry is always evolving from that standpoint. And that's one of the exciting things about being involved in this industry. And O3 is, growing with the industry as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's excellent. We have that mindset of permanent beta. In
Right.
our marketing and AI is coming, has been on for now. It's every single day is different. How do you, this is a personal question, but how do you kind of, with an industry that's evolving so rapidly, there's it's exciting that you're not in a factory. Every day is different, right? And every week
Right.
and every month you're moving forward. How do you balance that with the scale, right? Because scale needs to be built on foundation, SOPs, procedures, policies. How do you find that common ground of scratching the itch for being progressive, but also relying on some foundational elements for scale? Like, because sometimes in some weeks I find myself like, oh, I wish this was easier, But then other times, like I'm entrenched for a week, just diving deep into where our space is going. So how do you do that? How do you get through that?
Well, I mean, it's always tough. Balance is always difficult, and I find myself doing kind of the same thing that you just mentioned, Steve. Some days, I may have a lot of extra time on my hands, and then some weeks it's like I'm in the office, not leaving until 10 o'clock because I'm working on stuff and just get involved in, hey, we got a new process we have to do here. Let's develop the process, and just the excitement of that new piece of the company, or that new piece of the overall puzzle of things. So, it is very tough with, balancing the two of them. I would say the biggest way to balance it is just to have a good foundation as a team. Have your team have a really good foundation, and then you can pretty much pivot on whatever else. If you trust your team and you have the right people in place, then you can, and we're not a huge company, right? So it's not like we have, we're not an Amazon, we're not a Google. It's not like we have, hundreds of thousands of employees, right? So it's a little bit easier to pivot. But I would say as long as you have that good foundation as a team, and you have those individuals, those key players on your team, then you can pretty much handle whatever gets thrown at you.
Love it. Yeah. Let's talk about O3. Talk about kind of your core offering. What do you guys do? Who do you guys target? Who do you work for? Projects, geo. I see that you guys are international, right? So kind of talk about the different energies you guys in the space that you work within.
Yeah, so our main offering, which has been our main offering for years, has been on-site solar generation. So we've worked with C&I or commercial and industrial clients, providing rooftop solar, parking canopy solar systems. We've done some ground mount systems that may be next to facilities, and then we've also worked with some utilities as well. So building small utility scale projects
Really?
for that utility. So those have been our key offerings for years. Here going forward, what we're looking to do is we're looking to add to that project mix. And that's been one of our focuses since late last year. We're looking at not only how can we attack the energy usage that a property has, through solar or through some other, aspect of energy generation, but also looking at how can we reduce what the consumption is on site. So we're looking at other offerings for our customers, and we're rolling those out as well, wherever we can bring down the usage on site through more energy efficiency sort of implementations. Building controls. Building controls are a big one. Thermostats and controls on site may not be efficiently run and may be using a lot of extra electricity that the building doesn't need to consume. Having everything, in the morning flip on at once at a building, they have a huge load all of a sudden versus slowly ramping up certain things wherever they don't have a huge load at once. So, those control systems are key to bringing down the usage of electricity. And if you're using less electricity, you don't have to produce as much with solar or anything else. So those are some of the offerings that we're looking at
Gotcha.
and we are providing now.
That's interesting because I've talked to a handful of people, and usually it's the power, right? The energy, just delivery, creation and delivery. But not many people have brought it in and tied it into the actual process of the control systems, like you just explained. So it seems like you guys, do you try to be more of like project management A to Z, or because a lot of nothing good or bad, a lot of people find their niche of just, hey, just bring us in for the solar, we'll come in, we'll install, and we'll get out. Where do you guys kind of fall in that line?
So traditionally, we've only been in there for the solar.
Okay.
And then towards the end of last year is where we've been adding these other pieces. Our main focus is not necessarily, we've seen some other groups that want to do everything A to Z. Our biggest focus is to come in and hit the low-hanging fruit, the areas that are going to give the biggest impact to our customers. It doesn't make sense for our customers to spend a lot of money to save a few nickels here or there. We want to impact them the most with, the things that are really going to hit their bottom line. And that's where we're coming in and we're attacking these. Gotcha. Some other things that we're providing are, since we are doing solar parking canopies, are providing EV chargers.
Oh.
A lot of the hotels that we work with, they want EV chargers for their customers.
Makes perfect sense. You're already talking to them, right?
Yeah. And it's one of those things that the EV chargers themselves are not they're not a huge money maker, but they're an added service for the clientele of the hotel. So, I don't know about you, but I own a Tesla, and anytime I go on a road trip, I'm planning my trip of the hotels that I'm going to stay at. Is there an EV charger at the hotel, or is there one around there? And so, you pick those places that you're going to go to based off of that. So as a property owner, why would they not want those EVs chargers at their hotel to entice people to stay there?
Yeah, that's awesome. It's excellent. So O3 as a company, how many employees do you have? What kind of revenue you guys doing yearly? Type of projects, amount of projects, large scale projects, but only a few of them. You volume based. Doesn't sound like you guys are volume based, but sounds like you're more strategic in what you're taking on.
Yeah, we are now. Talking about some of the pivots that we've had over the years. We did start probably about 6 or 7 years ago. We started a residential solar side of the company.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, well, we did. We actually closed that about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
The residential solar market has gotten a little crazy with interest rates going up, and this week actually 2 residential financing companies just declared bankruptcy. 2 of the big ones,
Really?
Mosaic and Sonova. So that market has been in disarray for probably about a year or 2 now. So we exited it about a year and a half ago and just went back to our bread and butter that was commercial users and utility users, and that has been our focus since then. So whenever we closed out that side of the business, we actually scaled down a little bit. We were up to about 50 employees, and now we've scaled down to 12. So we didn't need as many employees in-house to handle commercial and utility scale projects because we contract for the individual projects versus on the residential side, we needed people in-house because we're churning out the projects or churning them a bit more. So a little bit 2 different business models. The residential side was that just churn as many as you can. Then on the commercial side of things, now that we've exited that, we're just focused on, the projects that make sense for us as a company and, slow and steady, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm always intrigued by the leadership and the business decisions there that you had to make when that decision came down. I mean, cutting half or over half your staff.
Right.
I don't know if it came down to a single day, but it was over time and you tiered it out. But how did you deliver that? How did you explain to that? And how did you kind of talk through that or, work through that process with the staff?
It was a very difficult decision, honestly, to tell you the truth.
Sucks, right?
Yeah. I mean, I had to, I had the discussion with, my other managers that I have on my staff at the time, my COO and my head of the residential side. And, we were discussing it because we had been seeing sales slowly drop off over, months. And, we were seeing in the industry, it wasn't just us, other groups were having the same difficulties. Plus with interest rates starting to go up at the time, now they've kind of stabilized and now they're starting to go down a little bit. But at the time it was like every month they were going up. And that increase in the interest rates really started making it to wherever the numbers did not make sense for our residential customers. So the offering that we had, we felt didn't it was very difficult to sell something that we felt wasn't as beneficial as it had used to be. And so with the sales dropping, seeing what was going on in the industry on the residential side of things, eventually we made the decision that let's just close it down. We were trying to figure out if there was some other way to survive. Our first adjustment was, maybe we take on some other areas, some other products to offer. That really just increased the difficulty of the sales. And so, the ultimate decision was to close that side of the business. And that was a very difficult, virtual meeting to have with everyone that we had to, lay off at the time.
Yeah.
So it was a difficult decision to make. Ultimately, now looking at where that industry has gone, the residential solar industry over the past year and a half, it was, looking back, it was the right decision to make. But at the time, you don't know if it's you have an idea. Exactly. You have an idea that, you can kind of see it, but you don't know if it's going to pan out 100% of the way. So.
Yeah. It's never fun. That's one of the things that we sign up for, right? We want to make our own schedule. We want to impact our own bottom line, but the same thing is we sign up for the things that are not fun at all, where we're impacting multiple families. But I think delivering it, and this probably goes back to, I would imagine, your banking days of you probably rely on data quite a bit. Based coming from that industry, so you're looking at forecasting all the time. You've referenced interest rates and data like 12 times already in 15 minutes, right? So you're looking at that, which puts you in the future. You're always looking ahead. You're always looking ahead, and by the time today gets here, you're probably already past today, right? And you're already in the future. So probably. I would assume you rely heavily on that experience.
Well, that's all you have to look at, right? Is data, and then ultimately a gut feeling based off of the data. So that's really what everybody makes decisions on in business and throughout life. So.
Yeah, especially with our first go round, right? This isn't your eighth venture. You're like, nope, I started and exited 7 times. I already know what's going to happen in 3 months. Like a lot of us, we're still figuring out along the way. I know I still am, even after 15 years. So it's interesting though. But so talk about the recovery there a year and a half ago or a year ago. It was the right decision now. You were able to see that. How does the staff, did it? I'm sure there was a dip, right? Morale, culture a little bit. But how does that rebounded now? Or how did that come back knowing like, oh, Brad knew what he was doing. We just need to trust him and believe in him. And he's our leader. Let's just get behind him and keep rowing with him.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely a great question, right? Because these are the things that I don't think that people outside of organizations really look at, right? They just see, is the company doing good? Is the company doing bad? They don't look at the end of the day, the company is people. And there is, people's feelings involved. Is the company going to last? Is this the right leadership? Do I want to stay here? Do I want to move to a different company? And so, you're absolutely right. At first, there was some hesitation with some of the employees. Hey, half the workforce just basically got let go. Do we want to continue on being here? But I think over time, that has kind of worked itself out, right? People see that it was the right decision. They see that, other companies are going bankrupt because they didn't get out of residential solar or they didn't make any pivots. And so at the end of the day, I think people have been happy, or our employees have been happy that we did make that decision and we did pivot. We are moving in a good direction now, adding some of those extra services, which are really going to expand, our solar offering. And it's been a very warm reception now moving forward.
Yeah. It's always easier when you're right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys in solar, you guys do wind as well? Any other type of renewables?
We've been involved in some wind projects in the past. Early on, I was not really at O3, but before starting O3, we are looking. What we do is more considered distributed scale. That's that on-site generation that I mentioned. And until recently, wind really had to be at a centralized scale versus distributed. So, most wind farms you see are very large, hundreds of acres, and you're really just starting now to see technologies that are coming out that are distributed wind technologies. So one of my good friends is the president for a company called Hover Energy, and we've been working with them to implement, see how we can implement them on some of our solar projects. Combining the wind and the solar. They provide a small distributed scale wind turbine that sits on the edge of a parapet wall, like on a roof, and so it combines with the solar. It doesn't take away from the footprint of the solar on the roof, and you kind of catch those updrafts off of the walls of the building, and so it provides a better solution overall if you have a good wind resource in the area. So yeah, so we are working to implement more wind. Wind is a little bit different from the fact that no matter where you are in the U.S., you're going to get sun. Wind, you may not get wind in certain areas.
Yeah.
There is a certain wind speed that you need for those wind turbines, and you don't have that throughout the entire U.S.
We talk about most places get sun. In Ohio, the last 6 months we haven't been getting a whole lot. It's pretty cloudy up here. It's gray and rainy this year.
Well, I mean, even if it's cloudy though, you're still
You'll
getting
get something come through, right?
There's still I mean, it's the the old adage that your mom always told you to put sunblock on even whenever it was a cloudy day because you could get sunburnt, right? It's because those rays are still making it
Getting
through the clouds.
Yeah, yeah. So, for the business and growth, how do you guys have outside sales staff? How do you guys find, or how do companies find you? How do you find your customers?
So we have a mixture. We have inside sales guys within the company, and then we do have sales guys that are independent that we work with. So maybe a lot of times what we'll see that groups may have an energy advisor or some sort of ESG advisor, and a lot of times we work with them as well to provide solutions.
Very, very common in your guys' industry, this renewable energy, is the consultant, the advisor role, where these people, they're just vetting out companies, I would assume, like you, and putting party A with party B. Has it always been like that over the years, or is it because there aren't a whole lot of industries that are set up just like that? Like to me, it's pretty uncommon.
Well, I mean, a lot of times groups hire advisors or consultants, right? And so it's a very similar. A school district, a city might hire a consultant. How can we, attack our ESG goals? They provide the overall plan, and then they look to other groups to help them implement the plan. And so we work with, groups like that are providing those plans, and then we come in and we help them implement it.
All right, where do you see in the future kind of your industry going? Are there any new renewables on the forefront that you're interested in seeing how they develop, or any new applications of solar that you're kind of interested in and excited about?
Yeah, so there's a lot of change going on in our industry. I mentioned before we got the ups and the downs all the time. They call it the solar coaster because you never know what's going to end up happening.
That's awesome.
We've as far as technology goes. Some of the technology that I'm very excited about, we have a project right now that we're re-energizing. So we've had this facility, the solar facility, for I think 7 years now. It's on an old landfill, and over the years we've had issues with wind coming in and knocking over some of the solar panels. Since it's on a landfill, we could not penetrate the cap that's on the landfill, right? We couldn't go down to the ground too much. So it was a ballasted system, which is just weighted down. So, but it's in New Mexico, and New Mexico will get these big wind gusts and knocked over some of the panels from time to time. So we're going in right now to replace the system, re-energize it. And what we're using a technology called Earthos. Basically it's just laying the panels flat on the ground. I mean, there's a little bit more to it than that, but in essence, it's just panels flat on the ground. And so, there's no issue with wind. And years ago, the idea of that was crazy. People were like, no, you need a tilt to the solar panels,
Yeah.
some sort of spacing, things of that nature. And now, we're looking at the technology where you just lay it flat on the ground. So really excited about that. They've had some strong growth as a company, and we're using that technology in this project, and really excited to see where it goes. They're also, there's also a robot that helps clean the system. So really excited about something like that. Never had a robot cleaning any of our facilities before. So it's just kind of cool as technology progresses to see what
Yeah.
ends up happening.
Yeah, how you can apply it, something that was created over here, how you apply it to industries across the nation. Like, it's that they didn't even think about, right, when they were developing
Right.
that robot technology. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
excellent.
So that I would say AI. AI has been another big one as well. Just we toured one of our solar panel manufacturers. We toured one of their facilities the other day, and they're using AI to look for imperfections in their manufacturing of panels. Little pieces that where they might have micro cracks in the wafers, and using AI to help identify those. It's just crazy some of the
Crazy.
stuff that's going on with AI. I'm really excited to see where AI is going to be implemented here 5 years from now. What is going to end up happening with it?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Anything, to tie back into leadership, and any quotes or any books or any single people that were like very influential along your career, or growing up? People I talk to, it's like, well, my dad always did this, or my mom always said this, or somebody, and it sticks with them subconsciously,
Right.
and you don't think about it until you get prompted for it, right? Any quotes or anybody along the way where you're like, I wouldn't be where I'm at without, definitely, with multiple people, but without this person.
Right. What you're talking about quotes? I actually I put it up on our office wall here. Growing up, my dad was a military guy, and was always very much, you'd say, hey, I want to do this, or I want to do that. And he was always like, well, why aren't you doing it? Make it happen. That was his thing, make it happen, you know? And so on the wall in here, we've got a quote sticker on the wall that just says, make it happen. Because, it's all about, a lot of people have ideas, and a lot of people have, I want to do this, I want to do that. But if you don't implement it, it just sits there, stagnates.
Yeah.
Nothing ever happens. So.
Yeah. Got to back it up with action, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say that was a huge one. Just that action of, you need to actually get out there and implement versus just talk about it. So, and I think that's the same with all entrepreneurs, right? There's the difference between being an entrepreneur and a wantrepreneur. What is the wantrepreneur?
Entrepreneur, yeah.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of people that just talk about it and talk about their great ideas. But if you can't implement it, then you don't really have a business. You don't
Yeah.
have anything there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's excellent. It's excellent, Brad. Anything else that you want to make sure that you leave? Maybe something to anybody growing or starting in your space in the industry, wanting to, maybe get to your role, or wants to be an entrepreneur, but they aren't there yet, 5, 10, 15 years down the line. Any words of advice that you would leave them with?
Yeah. I mean, the biggest thing I would say is, be patient. Don't force an opportunity that's not there, and continue at it, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. If you make a mistake, like we said earlier, you're learning from it. Everybody makes mistakes, and that's part of growth.
Well, Brad, thanks for being on. This has been an amazing episode. I hope I hope you enjoyed being on. I know some of our listeners are going to get some great value out of exactly what you've been dropping dimes for. Yep, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on, Steve. Really enjoyed it myself, and looking forward to the whole podcast series.
Yep. Hey, and where can people find more information about you, Brad Stutzman, the entrepreneur, as well as O3 Energy?
Yeah, so you can go to the O3 Energy website. That's the letter O, the number 3, energy.com. Go to our company website. It's the same with all the social media. Facebook, X, all of it is at O3 Energy. Or for myself, I have a website as well, bradstutzman.com, or any of my social medias also. It's also Brad_Stutzman.
Perfect. Thanks. Listeners, go follow Brad. All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, Steve.